Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and this is Taylor.
Hello.
And we've decided to do an episode of Come Drink With Me based around OkCupid questions. And how ridiculous they are.
I'm almost out of beer.
If you met someone online and they told you they were disabled, how would you react?
For me to properly react to this, I have to give the available answers. 1, I'd make excuses and stop contact. 2, I'd consider them as a friend, but not a partner. 3, I'd want to meet them and see how I feel. 4, it would make no difference. Now, of course, my choice was it would make no difference because that was the one that most resembled my actual answer, which is I'd want to meet them more. Which, why is that not an option? What are you saying about disability? If you're not making an option to that answer, I'd be eager to meet them. You know? Like with any axis of marginalization, you would, you know, like if you knew somebody had a lived experience that was similar to yours, wouldn't you want to meet them more? And given that 1 in 7 Canadians are disabled, why isn't that an option here?
Yeah.
You know?
Like the only possible reason why that wouldn't be an answer, and this is very thin possibility, would be the creators of the question not trying to fetishize disabled people. And I'm sure they didn't even think about that when they were writing the questions. So that's, no.
Yeah, no. I mean, you know, the disabled people being fetishized is certainly a thing.
Yes, it is, but I don't think that even came into the
disabled
process.
Disabled people being desexualized is also a thing, and it's a thing here.
Yeah, it is.
Disabled people fuck. It's,
yeah,
you know,
it's a thing. Does it bother you when somebody uses extraneous speech, for example, etc., in conversation with you?
So I think that on the, the political left, among social progressives, there's a sort of casual poo-pooing of anyone who is sort of seems uneducated, or the way that they speak is like that.
Yeah.
And so there's this undercurrent of both ableism and classism that is inherent in that question. If you're truly bothered by uhs and ums, I don't know, maybe look at really why.
Yeah.
You know?
Trying to process a thought in real time when you're given a question can be difficult. And you might know your answer to it, but putting it in an eloquent way is not something that everyone can do immediately. I saw somebody posted the other day, maybe Trudeau should go to Toastmasters because he uses too many ums and ahs. That's our prime minister here in Canada. And it's just or maybe he's coming up with real answers on the spot and hasn't just, swallowed a bunch of ridiculous propaganda material from his party.
And if you actually listen to what Trudeau says, if you, wade through the ums and ahs, because they're there, I mean, he makes a lot more sense than Harper.
Mm-hmm.
He obfuscates what's actually going on.
Mm-hmm.
He's less than Harper does. He's more honest than Harper is. I don't think Justin Trudeau is perfect, but he's, better prime minister is better. I don't know how many ums and ahs I've used throughout this whole thing.
Especially because we have the ability to edit things out when we don't know what we're saying.
But I do have cognitive impairments that affect, how I communicate verbally with, people. But I'm also university educated. I come from a middle class background. For me to look down on people because they just haven't had the same, access to opportunities that I've had. That, it's progressives, on the left, we seem to feel like we're immune to a lot of the classism and ableism and other isms that we often ascribe to conservatives and often ascribe to the right. We feel like we're immune to all of those things, and we're really not.
Yeah, and what bothers me is people will be upset when somebody ums or ahs or pauses mid-sentence to really consider what they're trying to say, And when those same people aren't upset about the way, for example, that Donald Trump speaks, where what he's saying doesn't actually make any sense, but it is full sentences. So, like, he talks in a very particular way, and there's a really good Nerdwriter episode about this, actually. I'll try to link that down below. It perfectly analyzes how his sentences work, and, like, if you look at them, like, he's not actually saying all that much, where Trudeau might throw in some ums or ahs, but he's actually saying a lot of content.
And it's another one of those things where, you know, the question is, does it bother you when somebody uses extraneous speech? It's like, the question isn't specifically like, would you want to date somebody who uses extraneous speech, but it's another one of those things where if you're gonna try to somehow semantically separate your standards of a person who you would date from your standards of a person who would be platonic friends with, very seldom are those things actually separate.
Yeah.
You know, very seldom does a person say, oh, I would never, you know, date somebody who did this, and, like, have a bunch of friends who do.
Would you be willing to lie on a job resume or application if you thought it would get you a better job and you were sure you wouldn't get caught?
So obvious, easy answer was, like, you know, would be, oh, I would never do that. But again, that's an easy answer if you were in a position of privilege. And this is not to say that I'm not privileged in many, many ways. As a person with an invisible disability, I have not once ever successfully got a job or even got an interview when my application disclosed my disability. Not one time. The real unemployment rate is like around a quarter for all Canadians across the board. For disabled Canadians, the unemployment rate is about 53%. So that's 47% of people who do have employment of some kind. And of that 47%, almost 30% do not disclose their disability to their employer. So they're fucking hiding in plain sight.
Yeah, so there's
Yeah.
like 17% of people with disabilities who their employers actually know and have still
Yeah, about that.
let them
yeah.
have a job,
Yeah.
air quotes.
There's just so much privilege in being able to say no, I wouldn't lie in an application for a job. And whether your axis of marginalization happen to be on an axis of gender or race or what have you, or ability as it is for me. I've had to stretch the truth in order to support myself when I have been in the workforce. That's something I've had to do in order to survive. And I took a lot of English lit courses in university, and a lot of them were centered around Victorian literature. And Charles Dickens, certainly, Bleak House, he would have made this point. Morality is for the well-off. He did this series of short stories about when he was, it might have been one fully self-contained story, but it was him visiting prisons, because I think Charles Dickens grew up in a debtor's prison because his father was in one.
Okay.
So because he experienced so much poverty, that informed a lot of his writing. And he always made the point of how, you know, morality and you know, what's thought of as being a decent person, what's thought of as being a person with integrity, you know, is so tied to what one is able to do, based on their social class, based on, you know, physical ability. Because of that, there's been this almost like moralization of any sort of lack of privilege, a moralization of, you know, people who have privilege are inherently more moral, because people who have privilege get to write history books and get to be the main account of an age of time. You know, the whole idea that, you know, if you're lying on a job application, it's because you're less than, is so steeped in privilege and classism.
I don't know why I thought of this while you were talking. An example of, like, we really love to take these moments where we assume that, like like, one out of a population of a prison is actually a good person and shouldn't have gotten the rap they got. And the thing that came to my brain was Jean Valjean and Les Mis. Like, he stole a loaf of bread to feed his family and it ended up in prison for 9 years in this story. But we love to have this moment of, like, not everyone who goes to prison is bad, but we're only going to say, like, one person is good, and it's usually a white dude.
Yeah. Well, how many, like, falsely accused, wrongfully accused, the wrongfully accused white man, who's like, late 30s with a 5 o'clock shadow.
Yep.
How often do you see that trope? It's always a fucking white guy.
Yeah, or people that watched my recent video with Monica about Con Man might know our perspective on this.
Yeah.
I'll put that up here. But
I was the friend who had to tap out.
yeah, this is the friend that had to tap out in watching that. But, like, Alan Tudyk's character, then the Ray Neely character, like, is such the, like, hard done by, I wasn't trying to be a terrible person, but terrible things happened character that
Yeah.
I can't enjoy.
I was accidentally ableist. I was
Yes.
accidentally transphobic.
Somebody else
I was
said-
accidentally
Yeah,
racist.
Exactly. Somebody else said this, and I caught on to it and didn't at all realize it was terrible, and now something has happened because of it,
Yeah.
and it's not my fault I was being ableist. It's not my
Yeah.
fault I was doing these things. It's-
So when I was in grade 5, so I would have been 10 years old, we were doing geography stuff, and I was sitting at this table with this group of kids, all white, by the way, the kids who were at the table, and we were looking at this map of Africa, and one of the kids who, like, seeing the country Niger, who knew what, you could pronounce that word as, was like, haha, that. And me, not knowing what that word meant, was repeated, haha, that, much louder, because I have a loud voice. And I got in huge trouble. So that's kind of one of those, like, accidentally racist kind of things. And, yeah, I didn't know what I was talking about, but that doesn't change the fact that what came out of my mouth was racist.
Yeah.
It doesn't change the fact that what came out of my mouth was damaging to the one, young boy of color who was in that room. What should be centered is not like, oh my god, I was accidentally, saying something
Yeah,
problematic.
Poor me.
Poor me. What should be centered is, like, the feelings of the person who in that situation, who was directly oppressed by that word. And, what their experience was should have been centered there, not mine, in spite of the fact that I didn't intend to say what I said. It doesn't matter. Intention was irrelevant. And, yeah, of course, like, what was impressed upon me in that moment by my teachers was, that's a bad word that you shouldn't say, rather than, like, why. So, of course, I didn't learn that until later.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm always a fan of, like, this is a word that I prefer you don't say, and here's the reason because of it.
Yeah.
And, like, kids are generally smart. Like, they'll listen to you and either understand what you're saying or not, but more often than not, they'll understand at least a little basis of what you're saying as to why you probably shouldn't say something like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the fact that, like, that's a bad word and you shouldn't say it is not the best teaching technique.
No. And, yeah, and it's such a, it's a nice clue that, our school system and our culture in general is more concerned about, like, what bad words are, what bad emotions are, and you want to avoid those words and you want to avoid those feelings rather than actually, looking at the societal implications behind those words and what they mean and what the history is there. If that's what the whole conversation, if that's what the conversation of, like, what political correctness is, if it was more about that, I'd be a little bit more inclined to, like, be interested in that kind of thing.
So we finally come to the very end of the questions that we set out to answer. There was a butterfly. Let's try that again.
There was a butterfly that scared me at the very beginning, and it scared me at the very end. It's great.
So we finally come to the end of this session of Come Drink With Me. Thank you for watching all of the parts. If you haven't seen all the parts, I will put them in a playlist for you, which will be linked up there. If you have any questions or concerns or comments about what you heard in this episode of Come Drink With Me, hit us up in the comments section. If you would hit the subscribe button on the way down, that's always really nice for you to do. You can hit like or share as you see fit. If you'd like to hear more from Taylor, I'll put his Twitter handle as well as the link to his blog in all of these episodes because he writes amazing work and I think you should all go read it. And until next time, bye. Yay, we did the thing.
Yay.